Picture this. You're at a networking event and across the room stands someone who commands every conversation. Their laugh is the loudest, their stories the most captivating, their presence magnetic. Everyone gravitates toward them like moths to a flame. You think to yourself, now that's what confidence looks like. But what if I told you that this person, this seemingly unshakable pillar of self-assurance, goes home every night and stares at their reflection, picking apart every word they said, every gesture they made, every moment they felt exposed? What if the most confident-looking people around you are actually running the fastest from their own insecurities? This isn't just a cruel irony of human nature, it's one of the most profound psychological paradoxes of our time, and understanding it might just change how you see confidence forever, and more importantly, how you see yourself. We live in an age obsessed with confidence. Social media feeds us an endless stream of people who seem to have it all figured out. Motivational speakers tell us to fake it till you make it. Self-help books promise to unlock our inner confidence in 10 easy steps. But here's what nobody's talking about. The people who appear most confident are often the ones fighting the hardest battles with self-doubt. Think about the last time you saw someone who seemed incredibly sure of themselves. Maybe it was a colleague who never hesitated to speak up in meetings, or an influencer who posts daily affirmations with perfect lighting and flawless makeup. Did you feel intimidated, inspired, maybe a little envious? Now here's where it gets interesting. That person you admired? They might have spent an hour crafting that spontaneous social media post, deleting and retyping it multiple times. That colleague who speaks with such authority, they might have rehearsed their points in the mirror that morning, anticipating every possible question, every potential criticism. The truth is, what we often mistake for confidence is actually compensation. It's the human psyche's most elaborate magic trick, and we're all both the magician and the audience. But why does this happen? And more importantly, what does it mean for how we understand ourselves and others? Let me tell you about Sarah, not her real name, but her story is painfully real. Sarah was the kind of person who, lit up every room she entered. In college, she was the one organizing parties, leading study groups, and somehow managing to be everyone's friend while maintaining a perfect GPA. When she spoke, people listened. When she laughed, others couldn't help but smile. From the outside, Sarah embodied everything we think confidence should look like, but Sarah had a secret. Every morning she would stand in front of her bathroom mirror for exactly 23 minutes. Not 22, not 24, 23. She would practice her smile, rehearse potential conversations, and mentally prepare responses to questions she might face throughout the day. She had contingency plans for her contingency plans. Sarah's confidence wasn't born from self-assurance, it was architected from anxiety. The irony deepened in her professional life. Sarah became a corporate trainer, literally teaching confidence workshops to executives. She would stand before rooms of successful professionals, teaching them to embrace their authentic selves, while she herself was performing a carefully calibrated version of who she thought she should be. The applause after each workshop felt like validation, but it also felt like fraud. The more people praised her confidence, the more terrified she became that they would discover the truth, that beneath her polished exterior was a person so afraid of rejection that she had built an entire personality around avoiding it. Sarah's story reached its breaking point during what should have been her moment of triumph. She was invited to give a TEDx talk about confidence and leadership. As she stood backstage listening to her glowing introduction, something just snapped. The weight of maintaining her persona suddenly felt unbearable. For the first time in years, Sarah walked onto that stage and told the truth. She talked about her morning mirror rituals, her scripted conversations, her fear of being discovered as not enough. The audience sat in stunned silence, then erupted in the longest-standing ovation of her career. That day, Sarah learned something that would fundamentally change her understanding of confidence. The moment she stopped trying to appear confident was the moment she actually became confident. But Sarah's story isn't unique. In fact, it's the norm. Research from the University of California found that 73% of people who score highest on public confidence assessments also score highest on private anxiety measures. The connection isn't coincidental, it's causal. The very mechanisms that drive people to project confidence are often rooted in a deep fear of being seen as inadequate. This creates what psychologists call the confidence paradox. The harder we work to appear confident, the more insecure we actually become. It's like trying to fall asleep. The more effort you put into it, the more elusive it becomes. To understand why this paradox exists, we need to dig into the architecture of the human mind, and what we find there is both fascinating and, honestly, a bit unsettling. Dr. Amy Cuddy's groundbreaking research at Harvard revealed something remarkable about power poses and confidence. While her initial findings suggested that standing like Superman could boost confidence hormones, deeper follow-up studies revealed a more complex truth. People who felt the need to use power poses were actually struggling with lower baseline confidence levels. The brain, it turns out, is constantly monitoring our behavior for clues about how we should feel about ourselves. When we find ourselves working hard to appear confident, our subconscious picks up on this effort and asks a dangerous question. If I'm truly confident, why am I trying so hard to prove it? This is where the neuroscience gets truly interesting. Dr. Lisa Feldman. Barrett's research on emotional construction shows us that confidence isn't an emotion we feel. It's a story we tell ourselves based on our behavior and circumstances. When that story requires constant maintenance and performance, the brain begins to suspect it's fiction, but the psychological roots go even deeper. Think about the development of a confident-appearing person. Often it begins in childhood with what psychologists call conditional positive regard. These children learn early that love, attention, and validation come not from simply being themselves, but from performing a version of themselves that others find acceptable. A child who gets praise for being the funny one learns to be perpetually entertaining. A child who gets attention for being the smart one becomes terrified of ever appearing ignorant. A child who gets love for being the strong one learns to hide every moment of vulnerability. These patterns carry into adulthood, creating what Dr. Brené Brown calls shame, resilience armor. Elaborate protective mechanisms that look like confidence but are actually sophisticated defense systems against the fear of not being enough. Ancient Stoic philosophers understood this paradox thousands of years ago. Epictetus wrote, "Wealth consists not in having many possessions, but in having few wants." The same principle applies to confidence. True confidence consists not in having many assurances about yourself, but in needing few. The Stoics distinguished between what they called genuine confidence and borrowed confidence. Genuine confidence comes from understanding your own values and living in alignment with them, regardless of external validation. Borrowed confidence comes from collecting evidence that others find you acceptable, and it must be constantly renewed. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most powerful man in the ancient world, wrote extensively about his own insecurities in his personal journal, Meditations. This wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. He understood that acknowledging uncertainty was the foundation of genuine strength. Eastern philosophy offers another lens through which to understand this paradox. In Buddhism, there's a concept called hungry ghosts. Beings with enormous appetites but tiny mouths, forever consuming but never satisfied. People trapped in the confidence paradox become hungry ghosts of validation, constantly feeding on external approval but never feeling truly nourished. The Tao Te Ching speaks to this in its famous line, "Those who know do not speak, those who speak do not know." Applied to confidence, this might read, "Those who are confident do not perform confidence. Those who perform confidence are not confident." Modern neuroscience has validated these ancient insights in remarkable ways. Dr. Susan David's research on emotional agility shows that people with genuine confidence have what she calls emotional granularity, the ability to experience and name complex, sometimes contradictory feelings without being overwhelmed by them. Genuinely confident people can say, "I'm nervous about this presentation, and I'm also excited about the opportunity to share my ideas." Performatively confident people feel compelled to say, "I never get nervous, I was born for the spotlight." The difference is profound. One approach integrates all aspects of human experience, the other compartmentalizes and denies half of what it means to be human. Dr. Kristin Neff's research on self-compassion reveals another crucial piece of this puzzle. She found that people with high self-compassion scores actually demonstrate more genuine confidence in challenging situations than people with high self-esteem scores. Why? Because self-compassion doesn't require constant success to maintain itself. When self-compassionate people face failure or criticism, they think, "This is hard, and that's okay. Everyone struggles sometimes." When people dependent on external validation face the same situation, they think, "I can't let anyone see me struggle," or they'll discover, "I'm not who they think I am." This creates what researchers call the confidence treadmill. The more energy someone spends maintaining their confident image, the less energy they have for actually developing genuine skills and self-knowledge. They become experts at appearing competent rather than actually becoming competent. Here's where the story takes a darker turn before it gets beautifully bright. The confidence paradox doesn't exist in isolation. It's fueled by our culture's obsession with comparison, and comparison is confidence's silent assassin. Social media has weaponized comparison in ways that previous generations could never have imagined. We're not just comparing ourselves to our neighbors anymore, we're comparing ourselves to the highlight reels of millions of strangers. We see someone's perfectly curated vacation photos and forget that we're comparing it to our mundane Tuesday morning. We watch someone's confident TED talk and forget that we're comparing it to our internal monologue of self-doubt. The human brain wasn't designed for this level of social comparison. Evolutionary psychologists tell us that for 99% of human history, we compared ourselves to maybe 150 people maximum, our tribe. Now we compare ourselves to millions of people daily, and most of what we're comparing to isn't even real. Dr. Tim Cass's research on materialism and well-being shows us what happens when comparison becomes our primary metric for self-worth. People who base their confidence on how they stack up against others experience what he calls contingent self-worth, a self-esteem that rises and falls like stock prices based on external market conditions. This creates a vicious cycle. The more we compare, the more insecure we become. The more insecure we become, the more we feel compelled to project confidence. The more we project confidence, the more we attract attention and comparison from others. Round and round it goes. But here's what happens when someone breaks free from this cycle. Meet David. Unlike Sarah, David discovered the secret early. He was a software engineer who, by conventional measures, had every reason to feel confident. Great job, respected by colleagues, successful projects, but David noticed something troubling. The more successful he became, the more anxious he felt. The turning point came during a team presentation where he made a minor technical error. Instead of his usual response, quickly covering it up and hoping nobody noticed, David did something radical. He paused, laughed, and said, "Well, that's embarrassing, let me fix that." The room didn't explode. His colleagues didn't lose respect for him. In fact, the opposite happened. The atmosphere relaxed. People started asking more genuine questions. The presentation became a conversation rather than a performance. David had stumbled onto one of the most counterintuitive truths about confidence. Admitting uncertainty makes you appear more confident, not less. This discovery led David down a rabbit hole of research and self-experimentation. He started what he called confidence experiments, deliberately revealing small vulnerabilities and observing the results. He admitted when he didn't know something, he asked for help when he needed it, he shared failures alongside successes. The results were remarkable. His relationships deepened. His work improved because he could focus on solving problems rather than maintaining an image. His stress levels plummeted. Most surprisingly, people started coming to him for advice about confidence. David had discovered what researchers call authentic confidence, a sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on being perfect or having all the answers. It's confidence that can coexist with uncertainty, mistakes, and growth. The contrast between performative confidence and authentic confidence is stark. Performative confidence says, I must never show weakness. Authentic confidence says, my worth isn't determined by my weaknesses. Performative confidence thinks, if people knew the real me, they wouldn't respect me. Authentic confidence thinks, the people worth knowing will respect me more for being real. Performative confidence demands, I must be the smartest person in the room. Authentic confidence allows, I can learn something from everyone in this room. The shift from one to the other isn't just psychological, it's physiological. Studies using cortisol measurements show that people practicing authentic confidence have lower stress hormone levels, even in challenging situations. Their bodies aren't constantly prepared for the exhausting work of maintaining a facade. Dr. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset provides another lens for understanding this contrast. People trapped in performative confidence operate from what she calls a fixed mindset. They believe their abilities and worth are static, so any evidence to the contrary feels threatening. People with authentic confidence operate from a growth mindset. They see challenges as opportunities to develop rather than tests of their existing worth. This fundamental difference changes everything. When someone with a fixed mindset faces a difficult question, they feel compelled to provide a confident answer even if they're unsure. When someone with a growth mindset faces the same question, they can comfortably say, "I don't know, but I'd love to figure it out." The paradox deepens when we realize that the second response actually inspires more confidence in others. We trust people who admit the limits of their knowledge more than people who claim to know everything. So how do you escape the confidence trap? How do you move from performing confidence to actually possessing it? The answer lies not in building up your confident persona, but in dismantling the need for one. Here are the practical steps that research and real-world experience have shown to be most effective. Start small. Once a day, admit something you don't know or share something you're learning. This could be as simple as saying, "I'm not familiar with that term" in a meeting, or posting about a book you're reading because you want to understand a topic better. The goal isn't to highlight your ignorance, it's to normalize the human experience of not knowing everything. You'll be amazed how often people respond with relief, sharing their own uncertainties and creating deeper connections. For 1 week, every time you catch yourself comparing to someone else, ask this question: what is this comparison trying to teach me about what I value? Often comparison is actually misdirected aspiration. Instead of thinking, "Why aren't I as successful as them?" try asking, "What about their success resonates with my own goals?" This reframes comparison from a tool of self-torture into a tool of self-discovery. Warren Buffett talks about having an internal scorecard versus an external scorecard. People with external scorecards measure their worth by how others perceive them. People with internal scorecards measure their worth by their alignment with their own values. So create your own internal scorecard. What are the 3 most important qualities you want to embody? How will you know when you're living up to them? Make these metrics internal. Things like, was I kind today? Or did I learn something new, rather than external measures like, did people think I was smart, or did I get more likes than usual? Each evening, spend 5 minutes reflecting on these questions, inspired by ancient Stoic practices. What did I do today that aligned with my values? Where did I let external validation influence my decisions? What can I learn from today's mistakes or challenges? How can I show myself the same compassion I'd show a good friend? This practice builds what psychologists call self-authorship, the ability to define your own worth rather than letting others define it for you. Replace the need to have answers with the joy of asking questions. You see, confident-appearing people often feel pressure to be the expert in every conversation, but authentically confident people, well, they're comfortable being the student. Practice phrases like, "That's interesting, tell me more about that," or "I hadn't thought about it that way." You might also ask, "What led you to that conclusion? And don't forget, I'm still learning about this. What's your experience been?" You'll find that people are drawn to curious listeners far more than they're drawn to know-it-all talkers. Start keeping what some call a failure CV, a document where you record not your successes, but your failures and what you learned from them. This practice, used by researchers and entrepreneurs, helps normalize failure as part of growth rather than evidence of inadequacy. So when you fail at something, instead of thinking "I'm not good enough," try thinking "I just learned something valuable about what doesn't work." Performative confidence is, well, exhausting. Authentic confidence, on the other hand, is actually energizing. Pay attention to how different interactions affect your energy levels. After which conversations do you feel totally drained? And after which do you feel inspired? Notice that you typically feel most energized after conversations where you were genuinely yourself. Uncertainties, questions, and all. This isn't just a coincidence, it's your authentic self telling you what alignment really feels like. For every inspiring post you see from someone who appears, super confident, remind yourself this is their highlight reel and they curated it specifically to inspire or impress. Then ask yourself, what would my honest version of this moment look like? This doesn't mean becoming cynical about others' successes, it just means becoming realistic about the difference between public personas and private experiences. When someone compliments your confidence, try responding with honesty instead of deflection or performance. Instead of, "Oh, I've always been this way," or "Confidence is everything." Try "Thank you, I'm actually working on being more comfortable with uncertainty," or "I appreciate that. though I definitely have moments of doubt like everyone else. Watch how often people respond with relief and their own admissions of insecurity. You'll realize that your honesty gives others permission to be, well, human too. Now we arrive at the most profound part of this story. Because once you understand that apparent confidence often masks insecurity, you start to recognize what genuine confidence actually looks like, and it's nothing like what you might expect. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't announce itself because it doesn't need to. It's comfortable with silence, with not knowing, with being wrong. It's the confidence of someone who knows their worth isn't determined by their performance. I think of my grandmother, who never gave a TED talk or built a personal brand, but who possessed the most unshakable confidence I have ever witnessed. When she didn't know something, she'd say, "Well, I don't know about that." When she made a mistake, she'd say, "Oh dear, I got that wrong." When someone criticized her, she'd consider it thoughtfully and either accept it or dismiss it without drama. She never seemed to be performing confidence because she wasn't. She was simply being herself, and that self was enough. This is what researchers call secure confidence. Confidence that doesn't require external validation to maintain itself. It's rooted not in achievements or approval, but in self-acceptance and inner security. Dr. Jennifer Aker's research at Stanford shows that people with secure confidence actually perform better in challenging situations because they're not wasting cognitive resources on managing their image. Their minds are free to focus on the task at hand rather than on how they appear while doing it. But here's the most beautiful part of this discovery. Once you stop performing confidence, you create space for others to stop performing too. Authentic confidence is contagious in the best possible way. When you're comfortable with not knowing everything, others feel safe to ask questions they've been afraid to ask. When you can laugh at your mistakes, others feel permission to be imperfect too. When you can be vulnerable about your struggles, others feel less alone in theirs. This is why authentic confidence is so much more attractive than performative confidence. We're drawn to people who give us permission to be human. Understanding the confidence paradox doesn't just change how you see yourself, it transforms how you see the world. That colleague who always seems to have it together, maybe they're fighting battles you can't see. That friend who posts motivational quotes every morning, maybe they're trying to convince themselves as much as they're trying to inspire you. That leader who never admits uncertainty, maybe they're terrified of appearing weak. This awareness creates what I call compassionate clarity, the ability to see through performances to the human being underneath. It doesn't make you cynical, it makes you kind. You start responding to confidence performances not with intimidation or envy, but with understanding. You realize that the person who's trying hardest to impress you might be the one who most needs your acceptance. This shift in perspective changes your relationships fundamentally. Instead of competing with others' confidence performances, you start creating spaces where performance isn't necessary. You become the person who asks genuine questions, who admits when they're lost, who celebrates others' vulnerabilities as much as their victories. The ripple effects are profound. Teams led by authentically confident people show higher levels of psychological safety and innovation. Children raised by authentically confident parents develop healthier relationships with failure and success. Communities built around authentic confidence foster deeper connections and mutual support. Here's one of the most surprising discoveries. People who stop trying to be influential often become the most influential of all. When you're no longer performing confidence, you can focus on actually helping others, on solving real problems, on creating genuine value. Your influence becomes a byproduct of your authenticity rather than a goal you're desperately chasing. And that kind of influence, the kind that comes from being useful rather than impressive, is far more sustainable and satisfying. Perhaps most importantly, understanding the confidence paradox sets you free from the exhausting pursuit of enough. Enough success, enough approval, enough certainty to finally feel secure. The secret that genuinely confident people know is this: you already are enough. Not because you're perfect, but because perfection was never the requirement. You're enough because you're human. And being human, with all its uncertainty, growth, and imperfection, is inherently valuable. This doesn't mean becoming complacent or stopping your growth. It means growing from a place of self-acceptance rather than self-rejection. It means pursuing goals because they align with your values, not because achieving them will finally make you worthy of confidence. As we reach the end of this exploration, I want to leave you with an invitation, not to become more confident, but to become more real. The next time you feel the urge to perform confidence, just pause and ask yourself, what would happen if I just told the truth about what I'm experiencing right now? The answer might honestly surprise you. The next time you encounter someone whose confidence intimidates you, remember Sarah's mirror rituals and David's discovery. Ask yourself, what might this person be afraid of? How can I create a space where they don't need to perform? The next time you catch yourself comparing your internal experience to someone else's external presentation, remember that you're comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. It's not just unfair, it's impossible. The most confident people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who never doubt themselves. They're the ones who've made peace with doubt. They're not the ones who never feel insecure. They're the ones who don't let insecurity dictate their actions. They're not the people who have all the answers. They're the people who are comfortable with questions. True confidence isn't the absence of insecurity, it's the presence of self-acceptance. It's not about becoming someone who never struggles, it's about becoming someone who doesn't hide their struggles from themselves. The beautiful irony is that the moment you stop trying to appear confident is often the moment you actually become confident. Not because you've achieved some mythical state of certainty, but because you've realized that certainty was never the point. The point was always to be authentically, courageously, imperfectly human. So here's my challenge to you. For the next week, try being exactly who you are. Uncertainties, questions, works in progress and all. Notice how people respond. Notice how you feel. Notice how much energy you save when you're not constantly managing an image. You might discover what David and Sarah and countless others have discovered, that the confidence you've been chasing was inside you all along, waiting patiently for you to stop performing long enough to notice it. The most confident people aren't the ones who never feel insecure. They're the ones who feel insecure and show up anyway, not as a perfect version of themselves, but as exactly who they are in this moment. And that, more than any performance or persona, is what real confidence looks like. The room grows quiet now. The spotlight fades, the performance ends. What remains is you, uncertain, imperfect, growing, and more than enough. That's not just confidence, that's courage. And courage, as it turns out, is what we were looking for all along.